I don't know if you've ever heard your life shatter in real time. Not in some big screaming fight or in the middle of a slammed door, but in the quiet of a Tuesday evening when you're just trying to figure out what the hell you did wrong. You ever stand in the hallway of your own house, listening through a cracked door, and realize you've become nothing but a piece of furniture to the person you swore you'd love forever? I was standing there, holding a socket wrench in one hand because I'd just come back from the garage fixing a leaky faucet she didn't even thank me for. I was going to ask her if she wanted tea. Just something stupid, small, because I was still trying. And that's when I heard her voice. She was on the phone, laughing. Real, bright laughter I hadn't heard in months. She said, "I don't even know what keeps me here. He's good, you know? Like, polite. He fixes things. But it's like living with a piece of furniture. No spark. No drive. Just there." My ears went hot. My throat closed up. I stood there like an idiot, listening to her talk about me like I wasn't 3 feet away, like I wasn't the man who paid every bill in this place, who'd spent years trying to be the rock she said she needed. I didn't move. I didn't say a word. I just stared at the floor, feeling like something inside me was caving in. And that was the moment I knew nothing would ever be the same. But let me back up, because you can't understand how a man gets to that point without knowing where he started. My name's Eric. I'm 36. I've been fixing appliances since I was 19. Nothing fancy, washers, dryers, a lot of dishwashers that never stop leaking. It's honest work. Keeps the lights on. I was never the kind of guy who needed much. Give me a cold beer after a long day and a woman who's glad to see me when I come home, and that was enough. And for a while, it felt like I had that. I met Lauren at a mutual friend's barbecue. I remember she had this blue sundress on, little white flowers all over it. She was pouring iced tea into plastic cups and talking to everyone like she'd known them her whole life. Confident. Warm. Sharp as a tack. She looked at me when I walked up with my old cooler, banged up, duct tape on the handle, and she smiled like I was worth noticing. I still remember that. We talked about everything that first night. Music, road trips, the kind of house we'd want if money wasn't an issue. She said she liked simple things. She liked that I worked with my hands. She told me her last boyfriend was all talk, big dreams, no follow-through, and she was tired of it. I remember thinking I'd never met anyone so sure of herself. She knew what she wanted. Back then, I thought I was what she wanted. You'd have liked us then. We were good together in those early days. I'd pick her up after her shifts at the dealership where she worked the front desk. She'd bring me sandwiches when I was working late in the garage. On Fridays, we'd get takeout and watch reruns of that cooking show she loved. She always complained about the judges being too harsh. I'd tease her that she should try out herself. Little things. Ordinary life. It was enough. We moved in together after a year. A little two-bedroom place on the edge of town. Hardwood floors that creaked when you walked down the hall. The first night we slept there, she said it felt like the start of something real. And for a while, it was. You ever look back and wonder exactly when it started to slip? When the small cracks turned into something you couldn't patch up? Sometimes I think it was the year she took that new job. She got promoted to sales manager, started working longer hours. She'd come home with that tired look, like she was carrying something heavy I couldn't help her with. I tried to make it easier. I'd cook dinner, clean up, run errands so she wouldn't have to. I thought if I took things off her plate, she'd have energy left for me. But it didn't work like that. The more I tried to help, the more she seemed unimpressed. Like the fact I was steady meant I was boring. I didn't see it all at once. It was little things. She stopped sitting next to me on the couch. Started scrolling her phone during dinner. When I put my hand on her leg, she'd tense up or shift away. I told myself it was stress, that she'd come around. Hell, I wanted to believe that so bad. I ignored every sign she was already halfway out the door. I remember this one evening, maybe a year ago. She came home late. Said she'd been at a work event. She smelled like expensive perfume I didn't recognize. Not hers. Not the one I used to buy her on birthdays. She kicked off her shoes, gave me a quick peck on the cheek, and went straight to the shower without saying a word. I sat there in the kitchen, staring at the cold plate I'd kept warm for her. Chicken and roasted potatoes. Her favorite. I couldn't shake the feeling I'd been replaced by something I couldn't name. But you don't say it out loud. Because if you say it, it's real. So I didn't. I just kept doing what I'd always done. Showing up. Fixing things. Holding steady. You ever think that maybe holding steady is what kills it? That maybe people don't want steady. Maybe they want chaos, or danger, or something you can't give them no matter how hard you try. That thought kept me up most nights. It was about 6 months ago when the fight started. Not big screaming matches. Lauren was too controlled for that. Just little digs. You don't get it, Eric. You wouldn't understand. Why can't you be more ambitious? I tried to ask her what she meant, but she'd shut down or leave the room. So I started blaming myself. Maybe I was too simple, too content. Maybe she was right. I should have wanted more. So I picked up extra shifts. I started saving up to surprise her with a weekend trip. Somewhere nice, with a pool and a view. I thought maybe if I showed her she mattered, she'd remember I mattered too. But every time I tried to reach her, it was like knocking on a locked door. And in the end, that locked door was the only thing left between us. So that night, when I stood there with the wrench in my hand, listening to her say she felt like she was living with furniture, something snapped. Not loud, not dramatic, just final. And if you've never had that happen, if you've never felt the air leave your lungs so fast you thought you might pass out, you're luckier than me. I didn't go in there. I didn't tell her I heard it. I just turned around and walked back to the garage. I stood there in the dark, staring at the workbench, trying to figure out how the hell I'd turned into an appliance to the woman I once thought would never look at another man. How did it happen? Was it me? Or had she been gone a long time before I ever noticed? I spent that night in the garage. I couldn't bring myself to go back in the house, not even to brush my teeth or grab a blanket. It felt like I'd be walking into someone else's life, like my place there had expired, and I just hadn't noticed the date on the carton. I sat on an old stool by the workbench, picking at the edge of a torn glove. The smell of motor oil was thick in the air, comforting in a way I can't explain. Out there, in the cold and the quiet, at least nothing pretended to be something it wasn't. Around midnight, I heard her walking through the kitchen, the soft pad of her slippers on the tile. I thought maybe she'd look for me. Maybe she'd wonder where I was. She didn't. She turned off the light and went upstairs. That was it. You ever feel that kind of emptiness? Like your chest got a hole in it, and no matter what you stuff in there, pride, anger, excuses, it just leaks right back out. I tried to tell myself I was overreacting, that maybe she didn't mean it the way it sounded, but my gut knew better. In the morning, I walked back and like nothing happened. She was sitting at the table, scrolling her phone with a cup of coffee. She looked up, barely, and said, "Morning." I just nodded, poured myself coffee, sat down. We didn't talk. Not about what she said, not about why I'd been gone all night. I wish I could tell you it was the first time she'd said something like that, but it wasn't. It was just the first time she'd said it out loud. After that, everything got sharper, clearer. I started noticing all the little ways she'd been checking out for a long time. Like how she'd come home from work with her makeup still perfect, but by the time she looked at me, her eyes were flat. Like how she'd leave her phone face down when we ate, but the screen would light up every few minutes, and she'd glance at it like she was waiting for something better to happen. I'd ask how her day went. She'd shrug. Fine. I'd tell her I missed her. She'd say, I'm tired. I tried to remember the last time she touched me first. I couldn't. One Saturday, I thought maybe I could change something. I got up early, drove across town to that farmer's market she used to love, bought fresh bread, the fancy jam she always said was too expensive. I even picked up a bouquet, yellow tulips. Her favorite. I came home, set everything up on the kitchen counter, waited for her to come downstairs. When she did, she looked at the table, then at me. What's all this? I smiled, tried to keep my voice light. I just thought it'd be nice. You know, have breakfast together. Like we used to. She pressed her lips together, like she was trying not to sigh. I'm meeting some friends later. I don't really have time. I stood there with my hands in my pockets, feeling like a damn fool. You could have told me, I said, trying to keep the edge out of my voice. I didn't think I needed to clear my schedule. Yeah, right. She walked past me, grabbed her keys, and left. Didn't even look back. I stood there a long time, staring at that bread and those flowers, thinking about all the mornings we used to sit together. How she'd tuck her feet under my leg and steal my coffee. How she'd laugh at something stupid I said. You ever wonder where that version of someone goes? Because I swear to God, she was real once. The next week, I tried again. I waited until she was home, sitting on the couch with her legs tucked up, scrolling through her phone. I sat down on the other end, kept my voice calm. Lauren, can we talk? Her eyes didn't move from the screen. About what? About us. She finally looked up. Her face was already set in that bored expression she'd gotten so good at. What about us? I swallowed. My throat felt like sandpaper. I don't know. I miss you. I miss how we were. I feel like you don't even see me anymore. She set her phone on the cushion, crossed her arms. Eric, not everything has to be some deep conversation. It's not about that. I'm tired, okay? Can we not do this right now? My hands were shaking. I tried to breathe through it. When then? I asked. Because it feels like every time I try, you shut me down. She stood up, smoothed her hair back. Maybe that's because there's nothing to say. That was the first time she said something I couldn't find a way to spin in my head. Nothing to say. Like we'd run out of words, run out of reasons, run out of anything that tied us together. She went upstairs. The sound of her footsteps was the only answer I got. After that, I stopped trying so hard. I'd come home from work and go straight to the garage or sit in my truck for half an hour, just so I didn't have to pretend we were okay. When she went out, I didn't ask where. When she came home late, I didn't ask why. It was easier. Easier to let the silence take up space where the love used to be. But easier doesn't mean better. It just means you get used to hurting. One night, I was in the kitchen fixing a cabinet hinge that had come loose. She was on the phone in the living room. I could hear her voice, low, a little warmer than she ever sounded with me anymore. I tried not to listen. I swear to God, I tried. But when you've been starving for scraps of affection, you notice every tone, every word. And I heard her laugh. That real, genuine laugh. The one I hadn't heard in our house in over a year. I don't know who she was talking to. Maybe a friend. Maybe someone else. All I knew was that whoever it was, they were getting a version of her I hadn't seen in a long time. And that hurt in a way I can't explain. A couple days later, I was sitting out back, eating cold leftovers on a paper plate because I couldn't stand the idea of sitting across from her at the table again. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Sarah, my cousin. "Hey, just checking on you. Haven't heard from you in a bit." I stared at it, wondering when I'd gotten so quiet that people started worrying. I wrote back, "I'm okay. Just working a lot." A lie, but easier than the truth. She replied, "You don't sound okay. If you need to talk, you know where I am." I didn't answer. Because what was I going to say? That I'd turned into a stranger in my own life? That I was too tired to fight but too proud to leave? You ever feel so stuck you can't even picture moving? That was me. I know people say a slow death is worse than a quick one. I believe it. Because by the time that Tuesday rolled around, when I stood in the hallway with the wrench in my hand, I wasn't even surprised to hear her say it. I was just empty. But empty has a way of making room. And standing there, listening to her call me furniture, I knew something was about to break for good. After that night, something inside me just shut off. I don't know if it was pride, or love, or just the last sliver of hope I'd been dragging around like an old tarp, but it was gone. I woke up the next morning before sunrise, sat at the edge of the bed, and looked over at her sleeping. She looked peaceful, like nothing was wrong, like she hadn't gutted me with a sentence she probably wouldn't even remember saying. I wondered if she'd ever think about how it felt to stand there and hear it. Probably not. I didn't bother making coffee. Didn't kiss her cheek before I left. I just grabbed my jacket and keys and walked out. It felt cleaner that way. Easier to start practicing what it would feel like to leave for good. That day at work, I could barely focus. My hands were steady out of habit, but my head was somewhere else. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face when she said it. That bored little smirk in her voice, like she was describing the color of the kitchen walls instead of talking about her husband. I kept wondering if she'd ever felt even a flicker of guilt. You ever wonder that? If the people who hurt you even pause to think about it later? I stayed late that evening, pretending there was something that needed fixing. Anything was better than going home. Better than pretending. When I finally pulled into the driveway, her car wasn't there. I sat in the cab, engine running, listening to the heater click and wheeze. And I realized I was relieved she wasn't home. That was the first time it hit me. I wasn't trying to save us anymore. I was just buying time to figure out how to leave without losing what was left of myself. A couple hours later, she came in, carrying a plastic bag from some boutique downtown. She didn't say where she'd been. Didn't ask where I'd been. Just set the bag on the counter, took off her shoes, and went upstairs. I watched her go, feeling nothing. Not love, not anger. Just this quiet, steady emptiness. It was almost a relief. The next few weeks were a blur of routine. I went to work. I came home. We spoke only when necessary. She'd ask if I paid the electric bill. I'd nod. I'd ask if she'd picked up groceries. She'd shrug. Some nights she'd stay out late. I stopped wondering where. It's funny how fast you can get used to being invisible. You'd think it would break you, but it doesn't. It just wears you down to a dull ache you stop noticing. Then one night, I came home and found her sitting on the couch, scrolling her phone with that little smile she didn't bother hiding anymore. I stood there a second, taking it in. And I realized I hadn't even missed her that day. I hadn't thought about her at all. And that scared me in a way I didn't expect. Because once you stop missing someone, there's no going back. That's when you know you're already gone. I started sleeping on the couch after that. Told her it was because my back hurt. She didn't argue. Didn't ask if I was okay. Just said, "Suit yourself," and went back to her phone. I think a part of her liked knowing I'd finally given up. Like it proved her right, that I was too soft, too easy to walk over. But she didn't know everything. Didn't know I was already planning my exit in my head. Didn't know I was done carrying the guilt for both of us. One Friday, I came home to find her packing an overnight bag. She didn't look up when I walked in. "I'm staying with Kelly tonight," she said, voice flat. I didn't respond. She zipped the bag, set it by the door. "You don't have to wait up," she added, almost like a joke. I didn't. As soon as her car pulled out, I went upstairs, stood in the doorway of our bedroom, and just looked around. The bed we used to share. The dresser I'd built for her the first year we moved in. All of it felt like props from a play we weren't acting in anymore. I went back downstairs, sat at the kitchen table, and tried to remember the last time we'd been happy. Really happy. Not pretending. Not going through the motions. I couldn't pin it down. That's the worst part, you know? When you can't even trace where it started to rot. Because then you can't convince yourself it was just a phase. My phone buzzed. For a second, I thought it was her. But it wasn't. It was Vivian. Vivian, Lauren's younger sister. We'd never been close, just polite. She was a few years younger, always a little quieter, a little more thoughtful. I hadn't heard from her in months. The message was short. Hey, you doing okay? I stared at it, thumb hovering over the screen. I didn't know what to say. I didn't want to drag anyone into it. But something about that text felt like someone had cracked a window in a room that hadn't been aired out in years. So I wrote back. I don't know. She replied almost instantly. Want to talk? I hesitated. Then typed, maybe. Another message. I'm around if you need anything. Just saying. I didn't answer right away. I just sat there, feeling more seen in two texts than I had in months living under the same roof with my wife. It felt wrong. But it also felt like something I didn't have a word for yet. And I knew then something was about to change, whether I was ready or not. Lauren came back late the next day, smelling like a different kind of perfume again. She didn't bother explaining. I didn't bother asking. We were past that. She walked by me in the hallway, her bag over her shoulder, and didn't even pause. Like I was the help. Like I wasn't worth a glance. And that was it. That was the moment something hardened in me. I wasn't going to fight anymore. I wasn't going to beg. I was going to leave on my own terms. I just didn't know yet that leaving would look a lot different than I expected. The next week was one long stretch of pretending. Pretending I didn't notice how she'd started coming home later. Pretending I didn't see the new number lighting up her phone when she thought I wasn't looking. Pretending I still cared enough to be hurt. Truth is, I was too tired to be angry. Too worn out to start a fight I knew she'd never admit to. Instead, I started putting my own plan together. Nothing dramatic. Just quiet steps. I opened a separate checking account. I boxed up a few things I cared about. My old baseball glove, some photos, the watch my dad left me. I kept it all in the garage behind a stack of oil-stained tarps. It felt almost peaceful, having a way out no one could take from me. One Thursday night, she went out again. She didn't even say goodbye. Just a slammed door and the sound of her car rumbling down the driveway. I watched from the kitchen window, my coffee going cold in my hand. I wondered if she was with him. Wondered if she was laughing the way she used to laugh with me. I didn't feel jealous. I felt free. Like I'd finally stopped trying to glue together something that was always meant to break. After she left, I sat on the couch scrolling through my contacts. I don't even know why I stopped on Vivian's name. Maybe because she was the only person who'd bothered to ask if I was okay. Maybe because she felt like the one person who wouldn't look at me with pity. My thumb hovered over the call button. I almost put the phone down. But then I thought, hell, what do I have to lose? So I pressed it. She picked up on the second ring. Eric. Her voice sounded surprised, but not annoyed. That alone felt like more grace than I'd gotten in months. Yeah, sorry to call late. It's okay, she said quietly. Are you all right? I swallowed, staring at the floor. I don't know. There was a pause. Then she said, do you want to come over? I'm up. We can just talk. I almost said no. Almost told her I didn't want to drag her into it. But the truth was, I didn't want to be alone another night in that house. I didn't want to sit there pretending everything was normal when it was already over. Yeah, I said finally. Yeah, I'd like that. Her place was about 20 minutes away. A small duplex on the edge of town. I'd helped her move in 2 years earlier. Carried boxes of books and kitchen stuff while she'd trailed behind me, telling me where to set everything. Funny how you don't know the places you'll end up needing until you're standing on the porch, wondering if it's a mistake to knock. She opened the door wearing an old sweatshirt and leggings. No makeup. Hair in a messy bun. She looked like herself, and I hadn't realized how much I missed seeing someone who wasn't performing. Hey, she said, voice soft. Hey, come in. I stepped inside. Her place smelled like vanilla candles and laundry detergent. Warm. Lived in. Not like my house, where everything had started to feel like a waiting room. We sat in her small kitchen. She poured us coffee, even though it was almost midnight. Didn't ask questions right away. Just let me breathe. It was the first time in months I didn't feel like I had to be careful with my words. After a while, she said, you don't have to tell me if you don't want to. But what's going on? I looked at her across the table at the chipped mug in her hands, and something in me cracked open. I think she's done with me, I said quietly. And I think I've been done a lot longer than I wanted to admit. Vivian didn't look away. She didn't say it would get better. She just nodded. I'm sorry, Eric. I shrugged. It's not your fault. No, she said, her voice a little rough. But you didn't deserve that. I didn't know what to say to that. Because a part of me still thought maybe I did. Maybe I was too boring, too steady, too much of a nothing. You know, she went on, she's been different for a long time. Even before you two got married. I looked up, surprised. What do you mean? Vivian sighed, rubbing her thumb over the rim of her mug. She used to talk about you like you were a project. Something she could fix. And when she realized you were just you, she started pulling away. That hurt in a way I didn't expect. Like she confirmed every fear I'd tried to bury. I tried to tell her once, she said, her eyes meeting mine. I told her she was going to lose you if she kept taking you for granted. She laughed, said you'd never leave, that you were too nice. My jaw clenched. Maybe she was right. Or maybe, Vivian said softly, you just needed a reason. We didn't talk much after that. Just sat in the quiet. And when the clock hit 2 in the morning, she stood up and said, you can stay here if you don't want to go back. I should have said no. Should have told her I'd be fine. But I wasn't fine. And I didn't want to lie anymore. Yeah, I said. I like that. She nodded. Spare room's clean. I followed her down the hall. The room smelled like fresh sheets. There was a folded blanket at the foot of the bed. A little lamp on the nightstand. I turned to thank her. And that's when she stepped closer. Just close enough that I could see the tired lines under her eyes. Eric, she whispered. I didn't know who moved first. Didn't know if it was her hand on my cheek or mine on her waist. But when she kissed me, it didn't feel wrong. It didn't feel like betrayal. It felt like coming up for air. We didn't say much after. I stayed in her bed that night. No big declarations. No promises. Just warmth. Just not being alone. In the morning, when the light was coming through the blinds, she rolled over and looked at me. You deserve to be loved, she said, voice hoarse. Not tolerated. And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. I didn't go home that morning. I sat in her kitchen instead, drinking the rest of yesterday's coffee out of a chipped mug, listening to the hum of her fridge. It felt wrong to feel so calm. Like I was betraying some unspoken rule that I should be in pieces. But I wasn't. I was tired, yeah. But under that, there was something that felt a lot like relief. Around 8, my phone buzzed. Lauren, where are you? No question mark. No warmth. Just a flat demand for information. Like she was texting an employee who hadn't shown up for a shift. I didn't answer. Vivian walked in wearing an oversized sweater, her hair still messy. She didn't ask if I was okay. Just handed me another cup and sat down across from me. You can stay here as long as you need, she said quietly. Thanks, I told her. It wasn't the words that got me. It was the way she said them, like she meant it. Like she didn't expect me to perform some version of myself that wasn't real. I looked down at the phone again, still lit up with Lauren's message. You don't have to deal with this, I said. Vivian tilted her head. You didn't ask for this either. I couldn't argue with that. So I didn't. By noon, there were 5 more texts. You could at least tell me if you're alive. This is ridiculous. Eric, I'm not playing this game. Call me. Seriously, what the hell? I turned the phone over and let it buzz against the table. Every vibration made me feel lighter somehow. Like every ping was proof I was finally doing what I should have done a long time ago, stopping the cycle. Later that day, I drove back to the house. Vivian offered to come with me, but I told her no. Some things you have to face alone. The place was exactly how I left it, quiet, stale, like an empty stage. I went upstairs, packed a duffel bag with enough clothes for a few days, grabbed my tools, my documents. I stood there for a minute, looking around. At the framed photos on the dresser. At the unmade bed. At the little jewelry box I'd bought her for our first Christmas. You ever look at a place you used to love and realize you feel nothing for it anymore? That's when you know you're done. When I came downstairs, Lauren was sitting on the couch. Arms crossed. Expression already set in that brittle, unimpressed look. Wow, she said, voice flat. So this is it? I didn't answer. I set the bag down by the door and started going through the papers on the counter, bills, receipts. I was trying to stay calm, trying not to let her see how much it still stung. She stood up, walked over, her arms still folded. You're just going to run off like some coward? I looked at her, really looked, and I couldn't see the woman I'd married in her face anymore. Just someone who'd rather win an argument than save what we had. I'm not running, I said quietly. I'm done pretending. Pretending what? She snapped. That you're some victim? No, I said. Pretending that you ever really loved me the way you said you did. She flinched. I don't think she expected that. Eric, her voice cracked, just a little. I don't. This is all so dramatic. I took a breath. You called me furniture, Lauren. Her mouth opened, then closed. She looked down at the floor. She didn't deny it, didn't apologize. Just stood there, silent. That told me everything I needed to know. I picked up the duffel bag, slung it over my shoulder. She finally looked up. You're throwing everything away over one conversation? I laughed, but there was no humor in it. It wasn't one conversation. It was every day for the last 2 years. She blinked, like she hadn't expected me to keep track. I turned to leave. That's it, she said, her voice rising. You're just going to walk out? I paused with my hand on the doorknob. You made sure I was gone a long time ago, I said. You just didn't notice. She stepped forward, her voice going sharp. Is this about Vivian? I didn't look at her. Didn't give her the satisfaction of seeing me flinch. She treated me like a human being, I said simply. Can you say the same? She went quiet. I walked out without waiting for an answer. I drove back to Vivian's place. I didn't call first. Didn't have to. She opened the door before I even knocked, like she knew I was coming. I set the bag down inside the door and looked at her. I'm not asking for anything, I told her. I don't have anywhere else to be. Vivian reached out and took my hand. You don't need to explain, she said. You're safe here. You ever hear words that feel like they were waiting for you all along? That's what it felt like. The next few days, Lauren called. Over and over. Voicemails. Texts. Some angry, some pleading. I don't understand why you're doing this. We can talk about it. Don't you think you're overreacting? I'm sorry. Just come home. I didn't answer. I was done giving her explanations she'd never listened to anyway. Vivian never pushed. Never asked me to define anything between us. She just let me be. And that, more than anything, made me feel like a person again. One night, maybe a week after I left, we were sitting on her back porch. It was late. You could hear the crickets in the field behind her place. She looked over at me and said, "You know she's going to tell everyone you left because of me." I nodded. I know. Does that bother you? I thought about it. About all the people who'd have opinions. About the gossip. About the stories she'd spin. No, I said finally. Because I know the truth. Vivian didn't say anything else. Just rested her head on my shoulder. In that moment, I realized I wasn't angry anymore. I wasn't trying to get even. I wasn't trying to make her see my worth. I was just done. And done felt a hell of a lot like free. A couple of weeks later, I got a letter in the mail. Her handwriting on the envelope. I almost threw it out without opening it. But curiosity got the better of me. Inside was a note. 3 sentences, neat and precise. I'm sorry for what I said. I don't know why I pushed you away. Can we meet and talk? I read it twice. Set it down on the kitchen table. And for a full minute, I just sat there staring at the wood grain. You ever have that moment where you know exactly what you're supposed to feel, but it's just not there? I thought I'd feel vindicated. Like I'd finally gotten the apology I was owed. But all I felt was tired. Vivian walked in, saw the envelope. She didn't ask. Just picked up the coffee pot, poured me a cup. Are you okay? She asked quietly. Yeah, I said. And for the first time, I meant it. Later that day, Lauren called again. This time, I picked up. Not because I wanted to, but because it felt like the last thing I needed to do before closing that door for good. Her voice was shaky. Eric, can we please talk face to face? I didn't say yes right away. I didn't say no either. There was a long pause. I could hear her breathing on the line, waiting. Fine, I said finally. Tomorrow. Noon. The house. She agreed. I hung up and felt lighter just knowing it was almost over. The next day, I pulled into the driveway one last time. The house looked the same, but it didn't feel like mine anymore. She was waiting in the living room, standing by the window. When I walked in, she turned around. Her eyes were red. She looked like she hadn't slept. Eric, she started, her voice breaking. I know I've been awful to you. I didn't say anything. I let her talk. I don't expect you to forgive me, she went on. But I don't know why I acted like that. I guess I thought you'd always be here no matter what I said. I nodded slowly. That's the problem, I said. She wiped her cheek. I know it is. There was a long stretch of silence. She stared at the floor. I looked around the room. At the couch where we'd watched movies. At the table where we used to eat dinner. None of it felt like home. Finally, she looked up. Is there any chance we can fix this? I took a breath. No, I said. Not angry. Just sure. Her face crumpled. She covered her mouth with her hand like she was trying to hold something in. I didn't move. Didn't try to comfort her. Because it wasn't my place anymore. You're really leaving, she whispered. I already did, I said. She sank down onto the couch. And I turned to leave. At the door, I paused. Don't worry, I said quietly. I'm not going to tell people every detail. That's not who I am. She looked up, tears on her cheeks. But you'll tell them about Vivian. I met her gaze without flinching. You don't get to decide what hurts you now. And with that, I walked out. We settled everything over the next month. Split the bank accounts. Sold a few things we didn't want to argue over. I left her the house. Not because I was being noble. Because I didn't want it anymore. It was just walls and floors. No warmth left in it for me. She asked once, just once, if I was with Vivian. I didn't answer. She never asked again. The day the last of my things were out, I drove away without looking back. Didn't feel the urge to. Didn't feel like I was leaving anything worth missing. When I got back to Vivian's place, she was sitting on the porch steps. She looked up when I pulled in, her hair pulled back, a tired little smile on her face. All done? She asked. All done. I set the last box down in her living room. Sat next to her on the couch. Neither of us said much. There wasn't anything that needed saying. We didn't jump into anything. Didn't rush to put labels on what we were. We just spent time together. Eating takeout. Watching old movies. Talking about everything and nothing. One evening, we were sitting out back. Sun going down, sky turning that soft blue. She reached over, laced her fingers through mine. "You look lighter," she said. I thought about it. About the years I'd spent carrying something that wasn't mine to hold. About all the nights I'd sat alone, blaming myself for someone else's emptiness. "Yeah," I said finally. "I feel lighter." Vivian nodded, like she understood without me having to explain. And I knew right then I didn't regret any of it. Not leaving. Not the silence. Not the way everything fell apart. Because sometimes things have to break all the way before you can start over. A couple weeks later, I got one last message from Lauren. Just a single sentence. "I hope you're happy." I didn't reply. There wasn't anything left to say. You ever wonder when exactly you stopped fighting for someone? I don't. I know the exact moment. It was the night I heard her say I was just furniture. That's when I started making peace with letting go. And standing here now, with the sun on my face and her hand in mine, I can finally say it. I'm not sorry I left. I'm not sorry I chose myself. And I'm not sorry she finally learned what it feels like to lose something you thought would never walk away.